Hello and welcome back to my channel, Reclaim with Dr. David. It's so good to have you today. As you know, we are kicking off with second episode of my life story. And today we're doing part 2 of my childhood. As I said previously, we talked up to the age of 4 when everything was fine, everything was going well. I was in a peaceful neighborhood where I could run wherever I want, climb trees, play with anything, and just feel, like a kid. But then a day came that changed everything. On that day, we ran away from our home. On that day, we left everything behind. Everything behind. We could not take clothes, we could not take anything. My mother, my 3 siblings, one of them was a newborn. We went on a run. We started running away from our home and never to come back until over a decade later. We never saw that house again. We never came back to that neighborhood again until over a decade. So welcome back. And if you are new, please subscribe to this channel and also share the video so that we can reach more people. I believe God is going to use this story. I believe that God is going to use my story to show that anything is possible. All things are possible for those who believe. So now, at this stage from the previous episode, so now we are at the stage where we are running. My mother told myself and my older sister to start running and follow the strangers, follow those people. My mom said, follow those people and I will find you. And then she was frozen in a panic attack, holding a newborn baby with my little sister next to her. She couldn't move. Meanwhile, we're turning around, looking at her, and thinking, should we just keep going? Should we stay with with our mother? What should we do? But then my mother kept telling us, just run, just run. Bullets flying on top of our heads, witnessing people get, shot in front of our eyes. It was tough. While my mother was confused, standing still, while crowds of people running past her, something miraculous happened. Remember in my previous video, I told you that I lived with my uncle, my dad's brother, who is the youngest of the family. As I said, my dad grew up as an orphan, so he grew up he had to look after his siblings. So when we ran away from the house, my uncle, we forgot to wake him up. He was sleeping, he was having a nap in the afternoon. So we forgot to wake him up. And then luckily, I don't know how, I can't remember in what context, but he woke up and to hear bullets and guns, and then opened the door and start running and following people. And eventually he saw my mom at a distance standing still with a newborn and a child and my sister next to her. And he came running fast and he grabbed my little sister and just kept running and told my mom, come, let's run. And then she kind of woke up from that confusion and started running with a newborn in her hand. Now she didn't have to worry for the other child, my other sister. Then we started running and running and running. Myself and my sister were already separated from my mother, and we found nice, good people who had. So when we arrived, we were in the middle of the field, out of nowhere, no houses, nothing. And people started building small shelters to stay in for the night. And we were sleeping on the grass. And yeah, there were people there who were really, really kind to us. And my mom came trying to find us. So she actually eventually found us, myself and my sister. Now we are reunited as a family. But when we were trying to rest, and then things changed, we had to run from that particular area, going up in the mountains, or they told us that up on the mountains were safer. So we went up the mountains, and there were some relatives that we had there, so we stayed there for a night. For a couple of days we were there, and things were a little bit calm. Now you're probably asking yourself, why were you running? Why were those shooting? What really happened that caused you to leave your home? What was happening? In 1993, on the 21st of October, the president of my country was killed, was assassinated. and he was the first democratically elected president ever in the country. He had been on power for about 3 months, and then he was killed. So when he was assassinated, that triggered a civil war in my country, and that's the beginning of what I've been talking about. This war, my friend, changed everything. I'm not going to go into politics of why and what and why the assassination and everything, but let's stay on the story, my story. So we stayed on that mountain, and it was cold. We had cold nights, sleeping in the fields. There's no blanket, there's nothing. You have been bitten by mosquitoes, struggling to get food. It was tough. But remember, my father was not with us. Where was he? Before the war started, my father was not at home, and we were separated that way. So now we didn't know where he was. He didn't know where we were. So started searching for us. Because he was away from the area where we lived in, so he came back trying to find where we ran from, where we ran to. And he found some soldiers and there. And he asked them, where the people who lived in this area, where did they go? Do you have any idea of where they ran to, in what direction? So fortunately, these soldiers, they told him, why are you doing this? Well, why are you looking for, this is a dangerous area, you can't enter it. And he said, I need to find my family. I've got children and a wife, and I don't know where they are. And this is where we lived. And I said, no, you can't enter, you cannot enter. And he saw a lot of, bodies on the floor, on the street, and it was just terrible. So he was walking through that. We'll come on that later. But people who were killed, they were still there on the street. So that's what my dad was telling us about when he came to look for us. So he came and looked for us, and they told him, so the people who lived here, they ran toward that direction. So he went, kept walking, looking and searching where we were. This was an era where there was no telephones. This was an era where there is no internet. So it was very, very difficult. So we go, eventually my father found us. It was amazing to see him again, and for him to see us, to finally find us. We stayed in that area, and then the war broke again in the mountains where we were. So we had to move again. Things go worse, and we realized that it was not safe to stay in the country. We stayed on the run, so now it's time to go to Tanzania. Remember, I was born in Burundi, and Burundi we share borders with Tanzania. So we took the boat, went to a place called Kigoma, sorry. We went to Kigoma, that's in Tanzania. When we went there, now we're going somewhere that we don't know, and we don't have any relatives there, but we just know it's safe for us. It's better for us to leave the country. We had lost everything. Remember, we left the house with nothing, no clothes, nothing. We only have one pair of clothes that we're wearing. So eventually, we stayed in Kigoma, and we found a local church that supported us. My father, he was very involved into evangelism and preaching, so they asked him to preach in that church. And once he preached, the church liked us, liked him, and they actually offered us a home. And we lived there for some months. We stayed there. We had good people around us, but we were not in our country. My dad has left his job, and they were looking for him, which raised a lot of questions. In that time, because he left the country, he was being accused of other things, of being involved with what was happening in the country. So it was almost impossible for him to ever come back to his old job, even if things were getting better. was going to get better. So we stayed there in Kigoma until when my mother got sick. She got very, very sick. Another tragic event was about to unfold. My mother was very sick to the point that she was on her deathbed. She told us what I would call a farewell, saying that she knows that she's not going to make it. She'll never go back to Burundi, but we have to move on our own. She told my father, things like, look after the kids, all these things. And it was difficult. She just said, I know, I can feel that I'm dying. And my father was like, no, this cannot happen. He started praying and praying and praying. Well, there were people who were telling us that there's a possible that she was poisoned or maybe some sort of witchcraft going on. They gave her medication and everything was not working. So she just went in the house, and so after she had talked to us to talk to my father, he has strong faith. That's one thing I know about him. He believes in impossibles. So he started praying, and he asked. There were people who were visiting, coming in to see my mother, who was very sick. And my dad asked everyone to leave, and so he can have his time with my mother. And then he started praying for hours, prayed and prayed and prayed, and eventually, God saved my mother. We don't know how, but God saved her. The next morning, she was fully recovered, completely recovered. We thank God for that. She didn't take any medication. Just miraculously, she was made well. And then she said she wants to go back to Burundi. Now she said, if I die, I would rather die in my country. I don't want to die in a foreign country. So she told my dad, and my dad said, okay, we'll go back. So now we're going back to a country that we know there's war going on. And the place where I lived was where the war was intensified in that region. It was the most dangerous area to enter. So when we came back, we could not go back to where we lived. So now we came back in the country, and remember, we are still just children. At that time, I was probably around the age of 5 or 6. When we arrived in Burundi, we could not stay. It was too dangerous. I'll go into details of what really happened on a daily basis. We lived a different kind of life, not an ordinary kind of life. Yeah, you'd expect to see things change any minute. We lived with our things packed. In the house where we lived in, everything was packed because we knew we could leave anytime. So I grew up in that kind of condition where you don't trust anything. We could be eating and gunshots start and people running, and that would be it. We just carry the luggages, whatever that we have, put it on the head, and then run and carry everything that we can carry. And usually we would not come back to that area because it will be then occupied by the armed forces, and it will be just, done, and we will just not come back to that area usually. So I lived in that kind of life. So when we came back from Tanzania, it became obvious that we would not stay in Burundi. So my dad, us as a family, we decided to go to Congo, DRC, so the Democratic Republic of Congo. So now we moved into another country. In this country, things got better for a little while. We joined a local church there. My dad continued the work in the ministry. So many things happened, a lot of tragic events, some of them that affected my life tremendously. So we were in Congo, and my dad and my mom would try to find things, food, and there was no jobs. We would depend on the UN HCR help. They would bring trucks of food, and we would line up, and we'd be offered small sacks for food, or small bags of food, and then each family, depending on how many children we have and so on. So that's how we lived. And eventually we moved into instead of living in a refugee camp, we moved into a small neighborhood. And I remember as a child being bullied because I was Burundian, and by the Congolese kids. I've got nothing bad about. I've got no bitterness for the Congolese people. They're amazing people. Yeah, but I just got to say, when I was a child, I was bullied a lot because we were refugees, and they were saying that, oh, these refugee kids. But I mean, I'll be told by other kids, like, these refugee kids, they just come here to take everything, and they I'm not gonna say everything, but nasty words, and even adults, they would just mistreat us because we were refugees, but God taught me a lot during this journey. I'm just going to tell you that God told me why I should trust Him and how He could always come to my rescue. Up to this time, when I'm thinking about what we're going through, it reminds me of King David. In the book of Psalms, though I walk through the darkest valley, I will fear no evil. I will fear no evil. Why? Because the Lord, my God, is with me. And my father always reminded us of that. We pray together, we read the Bible, and my mother would be there as well. And we encourage us, and they would guide us into trusting and having faith that everything will be okay, that God will make things right at the right time. So growing up as the oldest son came with a cost. What other kids had, the son talking about being bullied, while other kids would have brothers who would come to their rescue. For me, I was the older brother. At this time, my mom had another child who was a son. But you can imagine, so the first child is a girl, and my second, I'm a boy, and then two girls after me. So obviously, I was surrounded by girls, and I would not ask the girls to come to my rescue. You know what I mean? So yeah, whenever I would find myself into a tricky situation with my friends or people trying to bully me and things, I had to defend myself, and that, I think, developed in me a sense of self-esteem and resilience, knowing that I can trust God by my side. If it's just me and God, it's a full team. We don't need anybody else. It's nice to have others on board, but if you ever find yourself on your own, just remember that God is with you. And if there is nobody else, that's enough. With God at your side, all things are possible. Okay, so at this stage, we are in Congo. Things are tricky. We don't have enough food. We can go by without eating, relying on the refugee help, from different NGOs, we had to rely on the help from different organizations that were coming to provide food for the refugees. I remember one day I was I just got sick from eating the same food every single day. And one of the food was lentils. I like lentils, but they have memories behind that. So we ate lentils like for days. And I asked my dad, like, why can't we eat something else? And I remember my dad taking time and prayed with me, and he said, God is going to provide. What do you want? I said, I would like some meat or something different. And my dad said, God is going to provide that for that. And I remember that's one of the best memories in my childhood, is that my parents never told me that anything was impossible. They just told me it's about waiting. Just wait. On the right time, God will provide. Excuse me. Yes. So, I'll end this episode saying that now I was a refugee kid, away from my family, away from my neighborhood, away from the place I grew up, away from my family. I'm talking about extended family. I'm talking about uncles and cousins and all these kind of things. So we're just refugees. And then I had to survive as a boy, survive as a refugee with my parents, and also to trust God that everything's gonna be okay. But this was just a beginning. There were more tragic things that were coming. There were more tragic events that were about to unfold, and we get into that in the next episode. I'll be talking about another war. So we thought we left the country of war, not knowing that we're heading towards the worst war ever. Deadly. Was deadly, was bad. This is the time where I saw things that would be difficult to talk out loud as a child. This is the season where a child sees things that the parent would not want them to see. It's a war. We'll be talking about in the next episode about another family separation, losing each other, and this was the worst war than the previous one. Thank you for listening to me. My purpose, remember, for sharing my story, it's not because I'm the only one who's gone through these kind of things, but it's because there's power in sharing stories. There's power in talking about the wonders and miracles that God has done. As we progress, we'll talk about different things that I believe will uplift your faith. If God can take me from that, if God can take me from living in a way that I'm going to discuss in the next episode that is terrifying even to hear, and extreme poverty, living in the war zone, always witnessing things that you really should not witness as a child. But God protected me and brought me to where I am today. God bless you. If you're new, please subscribe and share the video. Leave me your comments. What are your thoughts? And share if there is anything that you feel that God is putting on your heart. There are children who are living the same exact life. Maybe we should take time and pray or do something to support and help them. Anyways, God bless you, and I see you in the next one.